I'd like to call a meeting of the Standing Policy Committee on Water Waste and the Environment to order on this November 3rd. I'm your chairperson, Councillor Ross Eady, and with us as well, we have Councillor Chambers from St. River, St. Norbert, and we have Councillor Mays from St. Patel, and Councillor Sherry Rollins from Port Rouge, East Fork area. Also with us today, we have our administration, Mr. Shanks is here, the Director of Water Waste, and his team. Sorry, I don't remember his name. Anyway, and we also have our senior clerk, Mr. Brayden Smith. I should have started off with our land acknowledgement. We are meeting here today on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, as well as the national land of the Red River Métis. We receive our water from Shoal Lane 40 in Treaty 3 territory. Can I have Councillor Mays, you want to move the minutes?
Sure. So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Anybody opposed? That is carried. Delegations.
No delegations today, Mr. Chair.
No delegations.
No delegations.
So we're going to move right into report number 1 then, the H2O program.
No, 2026 and 2027 water and sewer volume rates. 2026 and 2027 water and sewer volume rates is report number 1.
2026 and 2027 water and sewer volume rates is report 1. Correct.
Pardon me, thank you. All right, Mr. Shanks.
Yes. This is kind of report number 1. It's also kind of report number 4. I think we had a bit of an administrative challenge here with the naming of these things, but this is the report back to council that was requested for an adjusted, revised plan for 2026 and 2027 water and sewer volume rates. Obviously, this does the biggest change here is our strategy to fund Project 3. It's the biggest impact on these rates, and I can touch on that in an overview. I do want to just flag right off the bat, though, this also includes a slight change to the water rate that hasn't been in the conversation today yet. Like we didn't change the proposed water rate in the report we had in spring, but now that we're this far along in our two-year rate cycle, there's been some changes on our side that we thought we would try to catch in a.
Can you speak up a bit? I'm sorry, I can't hear at all.
Sorry.
And I think you said important information that hadn't been understood to date. So if you could repeat that,
Yeah.
I couldn't hear.
No, sorry about that. The thing I was trying to flag was that this report includes a slight change to the water rate as well as the sewer rate. The last few times we've been talking about this, we've only been talking about sewer rates. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't missed. Obviously the big issue here is how we're going to pay for Project 3, our plan to pay for Project 3. That's the biggest impact on the sewer rate. The difference you'll see in this report compared to the one last spring is the approach of incorporating the full. Like last spring, it was the Project 3 was done completely on rates alone, city goat alone, and that was not an option supported by council. This report reflects a 2/3 funding split with other levels of government. So the city's 1/3 portion of Project 3 would be funded by debt, long-term debt. So that change has a very significant impact, obviously, on the Project 3, on the rates for the sewer rates. So here we have on the table right up on page, the executive summary there, first page of the report. We're trying to summarize here that the rate For the recommended rate for January 1st, 2026 would be $4.53 per cubic meter. That represents a 3% change. Our last report in the spring was looking at a 42% change to the volume rate. So that's a very big difference in rate impact for sewer. Similarly, the recommended rate for 2027, $4.75 per cubic meter. That's a 4.9% increase year to year. The previous report was looking at 25% for 2027. So that approach, obviously, of taking that $1.5 billion off of rates only and funding it through a combination of debt and other funding from the government makes a big impact. There are some other changes in here. Obviously, we've talked about the CHIF funding for Project 2 that adds about $334 million confirmed for Project 2, which frees up $334 million of debt space on Project 2 to go towards the debt space on Project 3. So other than that, again, I mentioned there was some changes in the water situation. We're adding a 0.9% increase to rates, recommending a 0.9% increase to the volume rate for water for 2026 and 3.7 for 2027. Those there's been some changes in some project costs, but not project costs, but our working capital fund is not fund specific. So it is funded from water and sewer. And in our efforts to kind of make the rate, smooth the rates as much as possible and limit these increases as much as possible, we have really leaned hard on our working capital account. So part of those changes on the water side do help try to replenish some of that working capital. And there's different utility costs. I mean, we're incorporating the new water and sewer rates. If you can believe it, our plant actually pays sewer rates, so we have to account for that revenue and income internally. So that's part of the changes in water. And I believe there's a few other things on the water side that we can talk in detail if there's questions. Another thing I wanted to flag, just because we do talk about it when we talk about rates, the CSO funding assumption is still fixed as before with the $30 million a year plus inflation. That CSO amounts, they haven't been changed with this revised approach at all. They're still in there. Yeah, that's the well, sorry, I did mention, I'm talking about the percentage increases and quoting here the percentages changes to the volumetric rate. We do have how that translates to the impact on a typical our representative customer, the 4-family residential customer. So on the second page there of the executive summary, we do try to break that down to say what's the impact on your water and sewer portion of your utility bill. Works out to about 2.8% impact next year and 4.2% impact the following year.
I have a question when you're ready.
Clarification. So we're lower than mom and dad for Project 2 and solids, but what effect did that have on rates?
I can try and answer that a little bit. So by introducing government funding versus debt, it does relieve the rates a little bit. But again, when we issue debt, we issue it in chunks. We, the city, issues it in chunks. So each time you issue a chunk of debt, those debt and financing fees get incorporated into the rates. So initially, in the very beginning, the first few years, the debt issues are a little bit smaller. The debt and financing charges are a bit smaller. There's a smaller impact to the rate itself. But either way, over the long term, initially the government funding relieves the rates a bit. In the long term, because of all of the debt issue costs, it has a tendency to impact the rates a little bit later in the course of the project.
Yes.
I'll have questions after Councillor.
Councillor,
I'll have after Councillor Mays.
So I have 3 questions, if I may.
Councillor Bowles first.
So I still feel in this report, even though I'm glad it's here, I still feel for the reasons you've pretty much stated that this represents an obscuring of the true cost impact for ratepayers. I feel that this report really wraps itself around, you know, when you're saying a report and you're making a claim, the base rates will not change. That has not been the case last year, and it's not really the case this year, right? The base rates for 26 and 27, it implies a rate stability that I just don't think is an accurate statement given what you just said. The detailed breakdown shows water charges rise per quarter. And that's a significant increase over 2 years, right? Anytime you're at 1%, that's not significant, but when you're at 8 to 10%, that's significant, I would say, or else we probably should talk definitionally about what significant means, right? And that usage-based volumetric water rates increasing, that I think is directly tied to consumption, but it's the misrepresentation of affordability that I think is really important to talk about at this standing policy committee. And the other point I want to make is minimizing the role of dividends and cost drivers. And I think my colleague, Councillor Mays, will probably talk about this. So I won't spend much time, but when we say things like capped at budgeted levels, I do think that glosses over a deeper issue of, again, that hidden payment, that hidden tax, and the continuous diversion of utility revenue away from a system reinvestment is something that I'm here for, you know, but when I have a report that minimizes that, it is difficult to then get into it in earnest because it's so lightly held. And I think that's the purpose of this standing policy committee. And then finally, residents aren't passive funders. And when the first 2 comments are lightly passed over, I think then we treat our residents as those passive funders. This project has been the subject of very successful federal provincial discussions. I just got back from Ottawa, where we're trying to emphasize infrastructure, strategic infrastructure in our funding mechanisms, right? And we know in this city that federal politicians didn't necessarily understand the connection between water, waste, and housing until we and Vancouver came along. And so that piece we've been really successful on. It's very great when you're meeting a federal politician and they're like, I've talked to that Scott Gillingham. He's really emphasized, right, the north end, you know, and people are actually talking about your plant, right, in lockstep with the federal funding mechanism that's going to fund it. But the report, I believe, still treats ratepayers as revenue sources and isn't really talking about that shock and how we are, you know, how the Winnipeggers are funding a public service that they rely on daily. And when we have phrases such as changes in funding assumptions will impact rates, it sort of it doesn't unpack it for them. It really wraps, you know, that funding mechanism around us, but not around the rate payers. And I don't think we should be reducing human consequences here on affordability, fairness, and trust to what is, I believe, and this is tough criticism, and I'm because I do want it to change, and I'd like this standing policy committee to probe a little deeper. because I'm not getting a lot out of it. But to technical variables, it's not just technical variables. These are affordability, fairness, and trust issues that are really, really important. So it's also incredible financial stress for our government, and of this moment, the rising utility costs. So that isn't really explained here. The tangible service improvements or the environmental outcomes. And perhaps it's because you feel like, I want you to respond to this part, that maybe that's been probed to death, but I don't think so. The service improvements, the environmental outcomes residents can expect for their money is at issue. And when something net new is introduced, it's a moment to underline that. Especially given that many households are struggling themselves with affordability pressures across the board. This is an important report. It is very thin on details. So I will go into 3 ways that I think the department could improve the briefing. But I want to hear from you about this. This is a hotly anticipated report.
Not sure if I got all 3 questions. I do know, so you're looking for more detail on the project in the rate report? Is that the?
I made 3 points. 1, the provision of accurate and transparent information, and quoted the report saying the base rates will not change to jump off that point that I made. The second point that I made was minimizing the role of dividends and cost drivers. I used the quote of the report, capped at budget levels, glossing over the deeper issue that ratepayers are effectively paying a hidden municipal tax. And then finally, I said the residents aren't passive funders. And I used phrases like changes in funding assumptions will impact rates or rate model projections to reduce those very real human consequences.
So if I can, I'll attempt to address 3 points. First point, like when we talk about daily basic rates or base rates, that's the daily basic charge to recover cost for like meter sizing, meter maintenance, this sort of thing. So those, there's nothing, we're disclosing like the daily basic charge that was approved by council in our 4-year rate report is unchanged. That plan year to year is unchanged. So if like on the residential customer quarterly bill chart on page 3 of the report, there's a row for the DBC, the council approved daily basic charge. That rate that goes up the $1 a year or $2 a year, that's not changing from what the council approved rate plan. So that's
that is obvious rate, and then you move into water charges. And so when you say it won't change, and your response is very similar to that dismissiveness that I'm trying to underline, because when water changes rise and it represents year over year, next 2 years, not an insignificant rise. I guess the question is it intentional obscuring when you're pointing to the council base rate on versus the true cost impacts that I'm interested in?
if I may,
When you're saying one component isn't changing, and you're also saying, and you led with this, water rates we haven't talked about.
yes, yeah. So the water volume rates we hadn't talked about yet. If I may, like, can I get clarification on where in the report we're saying that the daily basic rates aren't changing or are changing? Sorry, you're suggesting that we're saying
words
rates
in
are.
my mouth. That isn't my point.
Okay.
When there is when ratepayers are led to believe that water bills will remain flat.
We're saying we're changing the water volume rate. We're saying water and sewer bills are not remaining, that this report is recommending a change to those rates. I'm not sure.
And yet, if I say base rates, you say not changing at all.
The daily basic rates are changing according to the plan approved by council.
Mhm.
That's factual.
I think the word rate is what you're saying very different depending on what word is in front of it. But for Winnipeggers, that is exactly my point. That you're not understanding. So, I mean, perhaps you can spend time with me between meetings and we'll figure each other out.
Or your views.
Sorry, so the second point you were making about the dividend, I believe, how we do, like the dividend has been frozen as per council direction at the, I'll back up. So the dividend is calculated in our budget by a percentage of forecasted revenue. So in the 4-year budget, we forecast the revenue and calculate the 11%, and that's how the dividend number is established. And then it is fixed at that number for the I guess for the 4 years, right?
Well, 26 and 27.
So the council direction last March was to effectively not have any rate changes for these projects apply to the dividend. Like if we increase the rates, that increases the forecast revenue. And so it'd be like an 11% extra money generated on this project for the dividend. So the direction was don't do that. These changes won't add to the dividend. So the dividend number, the 11% of the forecasted rates in the budget is fixed at that 11%. There is a table
Yes.
back in Appendix B that shows there's a row there for utility dividend. And what we've done is, so for 2026, it's 45 million, 2027, it's 48 million. Beyond, like for the 2028 and out, we've frozen it at that last number because there is also an action item from council for us to come back in the next multi-year budget cycle and come up with options on potentially how to reduce the dividend over a 10-year period. That's the subject of a different report. So in here, the 10-year model just fixes it at 48 and extrapolates it out. Will it be that in those years? That will be up for council to decide. But for the calculation right now, the revenue was fixed at 48.
Why is it a report for a different time?
Because the dividend options have a large, like we have to involve the tax supported side of those discussions to kind of come up with a plan to walk back $48 million in the city's budget.
Right.
There's a huge impact to the tax supported. So we can't, the department wouldn't be able to do those options on their own. We'd have to kind of work out a workable plan that's manageable for the city.
Why would you can't do it on your own? Like, without other departments? I mean, so therein lies my frustration. I mean, you're saying our hands are tied due to council direction, which I agree with. We continue to divert utility revenues away from the system. But it does minimize the role of dividends and cost drivers within this report when we don't even touch on it. And we know that residents, again, if you're to read this, we know that they feel that this is double taxation, that they're paying for both property taxes and other utility bills. And I'm missing that analysis in this report. And you're saying we're not going to get it.
Not
in the
this report.
report.
No, this report.
It's contextually held, which is part of the reason why I feel that the report wraps itself around our interests and not necessarily the interests of Winnipeggers.
Well,
It's brief.
like the report is to recommend water and sewer rates for 2026 and 2027. The dividend question, the dividend question is a separate question, separate report, separate analysis. We were all budget decision.
And I feel that serves maybe the department, but it doesn't serve me.
And we do speak to several places in the report, try to explain how the dividend works into these rates.
If you want to dismiss all the questions, we can wrap it up now.
No, Councillor, I'm trying to provide answers to your
If
questions.
you answer
I believe the third area was
Include tangible improvements in environmental.
right. Yeah, no, our fair point in terms of you know, if I'm interpreting this right, that the project, the report before you only talks about the projects, the main projects in kind of general terms. It doesn't necessarily, you know, provide extensive detail on the impact of these projects. I think not that we couldn't do that in future rate reports. It's just that in the past, like our rate reports have been focused on the rate calculations, all the factors that go into there, and considering the reporting we do on Project 3 or NUPIC, you know, we report on. We have regulatory reports, we have public reports on progress, we have financial reports to other, you know, standing policy committees. At any time we have, you know, awards or milestones where we're here reporting those details. There's a lot of reports and a lot of detail written on the impact and the technical details of those projects. Historically, that sort of detail hasn't been included in a rate report. So that would be the reason it's not in this report. Not to say that we couldn't put it in future reports. That's the role we can.
So the discussion, there's a budget.
Yes, and
There's heard of 2011 legislation that said basically told us that we have to do it this way. So they said that the rest of the time you give your license.
yes, and I actually should also point out like the funding approach presented in this report is also would be reflected in our budget submission. So that should, like the capital detail sheets we see in the capital budget documents will reflect for consideration will reflect this approach.
So there's a capital detail sheet for Project 3 because there wasn't last time, and by Councilor Brawadi saying I was voting against Project 3, I had to correct him and say there was no capital detail sheet in the 2025 capital budget pertaining to North End.
Yes, there will be
Right.
one in this project. I think that was for Project 2 because there's an administrative quirk to our budget document. The capital budget document doesn't include capital detail sheets for projects that are introduced outside the budget cycle. It's a problem we're trying to address. In this case, this Project 3 will be in this budget cycle, so it will have a capital budget sheet. But yes, you're right before. I think it was Project 2 we were talking about because of the adjustment. But it was this weird thing where there's no money, there's no project listed in the formal book, but there is an actual project. So apologies.
Yes, got a few questions. You know, firstly, just look at the mayor's platform, which was somewhat critical of councils for not asking more questions about police headquarters back in 2011. And this is 10 times as big. It's roughly 150 million versus 1.5 billion. So I'm going to ask some questions. And I don't think that's out of line. And I think we should take some time asking those questions. So firstly, on the good news side of things, Tim, if you could just briefly on the CSO and try and be uncharacteristically brief on the CSO. So we're moving back to the 30 million as division, but you had said we're, as always, doing the inflation adjustment. That's actually not as always. That's actually a good thing. I mean, if we're saying this says 1 million, which would be about 3% of 30 million, that'll need to float up, but that's a longer term projection. So what we're assuming here is we're going to be going back from 45 million to 30 million, but commendably, we're going to be inflation adjusting that.
Yes, that's
Great. Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely correct.
3%.
2% right now.
Yeah, the master plan called for 3% to be fair to the master. Okay, good. All right. So, and then we're not to get too fine here, but I think we had another year said we'll be done by 2048. I think this says 2045. beats the hell out of 2095, frankly, so, but just we're gunning, we're under provincial direction, I guess, to try and get it home by 2045, and that's the goal.
Provincial direction and council direction. There was the
Fair point.
the motion that was supported to make every effort to make the 2045 deadline. So yeah,
And I'm driving Edie to when we drive, nail in the last spike. I've already committed to that.
I think the 2047 date would probably be a cash flow, like where the but regardless, we are working towards completion of the program as it's currently defined, the capture target defined in 2040.
Right. And if we knock off the Keniston bid ahead of schedule, get some outside dough for that, we might be able to.
Can't remember how much percent that capture that is, but it is something, yes.
Moving on to the somewhat less transparent projects 2 and 3. So we seem, here's the difficulty, page 5, and this thing's written relatively recently. I can't accuse anybody of sitting on this. This thing's written in October. We've got funding for the new NR, nutrient removal. Funding for the nutrient removal and biocell projects remain in active discussion with both levels of government, and projected funding contributions are included in the 2026 sewer rate model. So this would be our third time announcing the provincial government share of this is 137. Like we have that. We seem to be saying two different things on biosolids. We got a 334 is confirmed from the federal government. We've said publicly we're getting 137 from the province, right? So that sentence seems a little dated to me. That's in active discussions. On the biosolids, we've announced a provincial contribution for them already, right? Is 137. I mean, if we're incorporating 334 for the feds, surely we're incorporating 137 for the province.
Yeah, I think that the sentence was probably worded to allow for, like, we have confirmation of the funding, but I think that I don't know if we have a signed agreement, like the actual formal paperwork process that often lags behind, agreements and public announcements and sort of thing. But so that, I think we were just trying to cover off as we have, these things are underway and we've got assurances and confirmation informally of that money for possibilities.
What then, I mean, that's just, I think we've already covered that. The bigger news here is nutrient removal and the way we're approaching this. And there's kind of a mixed blessing here. I mean, when back in 2020, we just didn't announce anything. We said, we're not going to incorporate our share of biosolids. We're also not incorporating anything from anybody else. Here, I think commendably, we're taking a different approach, saying this incorporates a roughly $500 million hit for the city of Winnipeg, spread over roughly 50 years, debt finance, good, yay. So the difficulty becomes, and I'm happy to move to go in camera if we can get some more information. All we're saying is we're in serious negotiations for the other 994 million. Like, give me some more. Otherwise, to be blunt, what this looks like is we're going to say that's the level. This will get us past the 26 election. And then there may be hell to pay. If that isn't coming, then what do we do, right? I mean, these rates are going to be way higher, as you said, if we have to go it alone. What comfort can you give us as we vote here today on the 994 million?
Would add, just for context to your point, like the city's timeline. So the project timelines, I should really emphasize this. Actually, I should have led off with this really. Project 3 timelines. We are in procurement right now. The RFP step 1, it's kind of an RFQ. That's already in process and closed, and we're evaluating shortlisters for the RFP stage, which will be in January, end of January. So in order for us to proceed with that stage, we have to have a council approved budget and funding plan for that project. Our timelines mean that we have to get our 1/3. If we're gonna end up with this three-way cost sharing agreement, we have to have our money ready to go for January. So we need this tabled now. We need it incorporated in the budget that's being tabled this month, November, yes. So
Timeline is nowhere in this report, right? I apologize for interrupting, but that timeline, you're providing a better oral briefing than the transparency around other government funding transfers and the implications for the city of Winnipeg and this council. You see that, right?
yeah, but we talk about the project timeline when we're presenting project reports to SBC and to.
No.
We've been very public about this timeline, but
No.
I'm trying to emphasize, well, I mean, the rate report itself is more than just that project, right? So, but I wanted to emphasize here to this point about why are we getting ahead of formal announcements of funding agreements? It's because we need our money squared away as soon as possible to make the January procurement schedule.
Okay, but the cynic in me would say, so we announced these much higher potential rates. Heroically now, we've lowered them down for several years. There's only one small problem. We're assuming $1 billion from other levels of government, and I can't find a piece of paper that fits anybody to anything. So I don't feel terribly responsible of me to vote for a rate structure with $1 billion assumption. I just don't. Like, hooray, I mean, good news if the mayor can get it. Like, kudos to the mayor, really. But you're asking us to gamble that there's going to be, I mean, we're already assuming that we're in for 137 provincial on biosolids. We've managed to announce it for them, I think, 3 times. See how they view that. Regardless, I mean, it's $1 billion assumption. Like, I just don't feel terribly comfortable. I mean, if there's something that can be said in camera, let us know and I'll move to go in camera, but no one said that just yet. So this is the comfort you can give me on the $1 billion assumption is, because if we get to 27, don't know if I'll be here, don't know if any of us, well, Lucy will still be here. I don't know if any of the rest of us will still be here, but oh yeah, we're underway. By the way, we didn't get the billion, so you guys are gonna have to suck it up and put in an additional $1 billion in city funding is gonna look pretty bad on all of us for voting that we're like.
Well, I don't know that. See, well,
No.
No, I don't think that's
Governance,
fair to me. I don't think that's fair to me.
Accountability.
I mean, the better answer would be, hey, this is still better than when you were chair, Mr. Mays, and we put in $0 for biosolids and 0 federal and provincial. And that kept the rates nice and low, but we didn't have any plan to build biosolids. That would be a fair critique. Here is, we're in for 500 million and we're hoping like hell there's another $1 billion coming.
you have to do the project. We're in for half a billion. That's right. Every 2 levels of government understand that there are plans for growth of the province. For example, Mr. McWana continued to introduce his big economic growth plan, right? Part of that is finishing all you.
Yeah, but that's the biosolids, surely. We don't need to take out phosphate.
Certainly the housing minister, the Liberal government at the moment, former mayor of Vancouver knows all about $3 billion sewage programs and how that relates to housing and growth. Right?
What is your point?
None of which really addresses my question, but respect. So, Mr.
So
Chang.
discussions that are happening regarding 199 million. People who are dialoguing about it understand that.
So, with respect, Councillor Mays understands it. He's asking that the other government funding transfers be made transparent because
Yes.
the argument within the public service report is devoid of those facts. And on the balance, their arguments center on that it's coming. And so he's asking for insurance. It is a salient point he's making that he has no insurance.
So is that based on the language
He's
on page
also
5?
offered to go into camera to get that insurance, and I, for one, am interested in going into camera if that will provide us that assurance.
But is it based on the language in page 5, this paragraph where funding for NR and biosolids projects remain in active discussion, both levels of government? Is that the transparency piece that you're?
I think we're fine on biosolids. The NR is, yes,
Yeah,
active
nutrient
discussion could mean, what if it's more than $1 billion? Then we've overshot on the rates, right? I mean, what if they fund the whole damn thing?
It could potentially be overshot on the rates, but keeping in mind, we're only approving 2 years in this report.
Just wanted to come back to your question, but I just wanted to touch on one thing when you mentioned about the project 2 versus project 3 and which is needed for growth and which isn't. Project 3 is absolutely needed for growth as well as the environmental compliance. We've spoken to this before about project 2's digesters are being sized for the biological removal of nutrients. If we don't proceed with project 3 the way it's being conceptualized now, then the digesters we have budgeted and are building and designing right now with project 2 will be undersized and out of capacity. Again, we'll be right back to where we were in the early 2030s, maybe 2031, 2032. It could be, we would be back to the same issue with moratorium on capacity. Yeah, get a new capacity. So project 3 is required for the whole plant upgrade is required to unlock the up to 2050 design. So just wanted to say that. I guess back to the real question here about what can we say about other levels of government funding plans. We can't really comment on, like, the public service certainly can't comment on or speak for the province or the federal government in any official capacity. The best we can say right now is that these negotiations are underway and there's confidence, at least at the political level, that this funding will materialize. We did come to council with a go loan option, and it's not supported by council. Affordability, I mean, and totally understandable. I mean, it's been very huge rate increases as we all saw. So that option has we've been directed not to pursue that option. We've been directed to come back with a different option. This is the option we have right now. And again, like I say, timeline wise, we need to get our part of this plan ready and formalized and authorized as soon as possible. So that's why it's
Okay, I appreciate the lectures from people about meeting timeframes. And boy, I remember that 2095 thing was just gonna miss the CSO deadline by 50 years, and no one seemed too worked out, but luckily we've solved that. So, I mean, Tim, here's my real question. And I appreciate, one could say, well, why are we we're monkeying around with this politically by having a shorter rate report. But actually, if you look back, we had 2019, we had a 1 year rate report, right? Like there's no statutory requirement to do 4 years. I don't like where we've gone 4, we've gone 1, we've gone 2. It's been all over the map. So that's fair. But I'm being asked to vote on something that incorporates $1 billion, and I'm rounding it by 6 million. It incorporates $1 billion in assumptions, and we haven't had a council seminar on this, we haven't had any briefing on this, and I don't think I'm really doing my job. I mean, certainly the rate increase looks a lot lower if you assume $1 billion from other levels of government. That is inarguably true. Right. So,
and also the use of debt, like this requires a change in debt policy, right? Like our
that was going to be my final question.
yes.
Was Fireway. Well, I've been rebuked many times for coming up with ideas because we're up against our debt ceiling, and and yeah, I understand the concept of the debt ceiling, but so this incorporates a change in debt policy.
We will have to vote on that after the rates. A change in that policy is coming.
And Councillor 82's credit has been calling for that for probably the entire time he's been here, but at least as long as I can remember, so that, which is commendable. So, okay, so we would be increasing the debt ceiling, for lack of a better, yeah, okay, I see. People agreeing with it. Good, all right, we will need to do that, even if we're only in for 500 million on the city end, we'd still need to change debt policy. Okay, thank you. I really would prefer to have some further briefing, whether that's in camera or not. I'll leave
So
it
would
at
I.
that.
I do believe that this is in keeping with that KPMG report. I believe that last month's video and this month's video is emblematic of the transparency communication problems that we have and the ratepayers experience, the lack of plain language, the lack of acknowledgement of ratepayer impact and value, and the transparency around dividends and other government funding transfers. This is not enough.
I have to say as well, I mean, we don't know what conditions are tied to any federal funding. I mean, we've already had, you have to do fourplexes, you have to do no parking minima near higher order transit. So I think that we would need to see, here's 500 million, but you have to close every municipal golf course. Here's 500 million, but you need to allow 8 plexes everywhere. Here's 500 million, so you need to, shut down every pool in the city. I don't know, but I mean, they're already meddling in our affairs pretty badly, so we don't know. So it's a little much to say, well, we're going to proceed on the assumption that we're getting this. We're in negotiations, but we're not going to give you any sense of where that's coming from federally or what conditions may apply.
No, we're expecting it in budget 2026. It's not long term. It's Tuesday.
There's nothing to see it right now. There's nothing to go into.
In your opinion, it's $1 billion. In your opinion, it's $1 billion. And you know what? Then the reverse should also be true though. If one would assume we're not getting it, then one would need a different proposal. And we don't have that option before us either, which is just as irresponsible. So you are occupying the position that we don't know what we don't know. And so if that's the case, then Mr. Chair, where is the option on we're not getting it? And then to the public service, where is that option? Because if the public service can neither breathe.
But we didn't actually have the money for biosolids. We're talking about their shares and all these conditions that came with the money we did get. So
No, we had a
this
formula.
one, we're gonna take it differently. It is $1 billion. It's very frightening to me. But they're an ongoing dialogue and discussion. And as I said, the housing minister actually understands the need for sewage erosion and water pollution control. This, the Lower Mainland is dealing with the same thing. So,
Sorry, I think Councilor
They
James is
understand
turning, then I'll
that.
come back, sorry.
yeah, understand.
That's a question.
There's no condition for this moment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I guess the uncertainty that we're talking about, the $1 billion, that's the piece that's still in discussions. It's still, and again, for the nutrient removal and biosolids, that's part of an environmental license. And it talks about that we have to use the best technology as opposed to, lowest bidder, so to speak.
Yeah, I know there's been some public discussion about Best and Cadillac and Ford sort of stuff. It's very misinformed. And our marching orders to recover nutrients versus trying to use some older approach with using chemical that's not as sustainable or chemicals more expensive, to be honest. But if the conversation is being framed around the idea that biological nutrient removal is somehow some kind of, deluxe, unnecessary approach, that's completely incorrect. Our license requirement and, the business case really, in terms of long-term sustainability, reuse of nutrients, and lowest operational cost and the industry kind of standard is to move to nutrient removal. And like I said, it creates, in terms of the impact to the rest of the program, it creates a leaner, lower volume sludge that you can actually recover the nutrients out of. It's not bonded with chemical. I mean, I could go on for quite a while about this, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that our cost estimates based on the enhanced preliminary design we did for Project 3 is, yes, it's a modern plant, it's a modern approach, but it's being done through the lens of trying to have the most efficient, long-term best value for the citizens of Winnipeg and increase the capacity of the plant, meet those environmental guidelines, and get us out to a 2050 design date. Sorry, that was a bit of a side.
So,
Biological, so.
Yes. Biological.
so with that, I'm concerned about the overall bill that Winnipeggers are going to receive. I mean, there's already been a management fee added to the solid waste component of water and waste in April of 2025, and now these new rates that come out in 2026 and 2027. To me, it speaks to the issue of affordability for some Winnipeggers. I note that there are programs that we have, the H2O program, the Water Leak Credit Program, and whatnot. Again, for me, it's the affordability issue. Recognizing that the rates are not what they would have been if we didn't get some of the federal funding that we received, but still, I'm still concerned about the affordability to Winnipeggers. Where do we rate in terms of comparison to other municipalities with respect to water and waste issues?
So Appendix C, we try to have some comparators for kind of regional cities. We're roughly middle of the pack. I'm not sure, like it's hard to compare. These are examples where we can have clear comparisons, volumetric rates, daily basic charges, this sort of thing. Some jurisdictions have different tiered. We talked about that.
As close to orange to oranges or apples to apples.
Yeah, so that's the attempt there. We're roughly in the middle. To your point about affordability, it is top of mind. I mean, we do two things I could point to, like in the implications of this report, right? In the implications section of this report, we do highlight, we do have the Water Leak Credit Policy, but the Help to Others program that we're trying to build awareness of is also the subject of the next two reports on this agenda.
Yeah.
Because it was council directed.
Pardon me?
It was council directed.
The reports on the agenda to come back, the next two reports. We are looking to increase and expand the eligibility so that the waste management fee that you spoke of, so that the waste management fee could be part of it, not just water and sewer, that sort of thing. So we're trying to help with utility bills completely, because it is. We do recognize it's getting more expensive and similar to everything else.
I had one or two more questions. I think Headworks relied heavily on ISIP funding, and there was all sorts of noise about how ISIP was gonna cover any cost overruns in projects. And we have any further guidance on that? I don't think any of biosolids is coming from that. I stand to be corrected, but we know if any of that funding is coming for project 3.
ISIP, ISIP, so, funding programs like ISIP and CHIF, the eligible costs calculation, is usually, fixed at a point in time. It'll say, here's your, the budget approved at time of tender or something. And then some costs are not eligible. I apologize, I'm not sure of the details, seeing that some of them like certain consultant costs or certain aspects of the costs are not necessarily eligible. It's not like all of your project is eligible. So there's a calculation done at that point in time, and then that's where the funding, that's where the totals for these funding agreements are finalized. So ISIP funding, yes, was for headworks. The federal government was in for, I think, 116 million.
Back. That was way back.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, in terms of, it would be CHIF for biosolids. I don't think there's any ISIP for,
Okay, fair enough. A better question, in terms of conditions, we had the confusing do-si-do about a month ago of, some staff saying they thought the province was insisting on project labor agreement for biosolids, and the CAO subsequently saying, no, that was not a provincial condition for biosolids. But this is the other thing, though. This is right. The province is now saying that there's going to be project labor agreements required on everything over some threshold. This is in excess of the threshold, all that verbiage about good union jobs. So we're expecting this one, there's going to be a project labor agreement. B, that do anything to our cost assumptions, or the numbers so massive that no actual labor costs here may be a pretty small component.
I don't believe that's directly at the time of estimate. I don't think that was the case for project 3, but obviously we will comply with whatever requirements are made. And if things change, like as we get with the progressive design build, when we enter the development phase of progressive design build, like we are with project 2, there's that cap number that we're working to as we formalize the design. If there's changes either way, we can go back and adjust the budget. So if things change, funding agreements change, a new funding program is out, or different conditions are assigned to the funding, we would go back and incorporate those changes.
Okay, we at the city level have not incorporated anything into any phase yet about project labor agreement.
I would have to go back and confirm it, please.
I'm going to talk to Councillor Lee about it. So, okay, thank you.
So I really continue to be concerned about briefing and the information that Winnipeggers are being presented with in this report that impacts their affordability. I guess, my final question, we've had Winnipeggers in up to 3-hour lineups, waiting for, to pay bills from our last council directed changes. I argued that we needed to be exactly here with a line of sight prior to budget. You're saying that in budget, there's a much more substantial brief coming, but this is the vote that councillors have to increase rates yet again this year. This is the report. And so my question is impacts on the typical household. If you are anticipating those 3-hour calls to 311 that has, been reduced, granted, What are you saying in terms of the impact on a typical household? Where is that information? What is the impact on a typical household for going forward now?
In terms of contacting our billing center? Like, so the.
If you're thinking like a ratepayer and you're anticipating your own household bill
Yep.
or mine, because I live in Winnipeg. What are you saying? What is that basic information? If you're concerned about affordability, what does this imply in terms of the average cost to a householder?
On page 3, where we talk about the average householder, average customer, it's about a $44 increase to the average consumer in 2026 for the annual. We're expecting, these are approved on average, your bill impact will be about 2.8% increase next year. So we do, separate from this report, I just wanted to set like the utility billing center wait times through the call lines. We absolutely are aware of and working on a bunch of different things that we're trying to do to get those wait times down. I do want to highlight, because it is a chance to highlight, that almost everything you need to do about your bill, you can do online on My Utility, with a My Utility account. We've had a lot of success getting a lot of customers. Over half our customers are now online. You can pay your bills. You can provide meter readings, do all sorts of things online with My Utility. You can do them with web forms. So we are moving towards a couple of longer term solutions to help with the billing center. We're always going to provide the option for folks to call us, obviously. Some people prefer that. And but we are aware, obviously, of this issue, and we are working on several things to try to that. Our ultimate long-term solution, again, anytime we talk about this, I point out that our remote meter reads, our AMI, our modern smart meters that we will be installing starting next year, I think is the first wave of them next year. You know, over the course of a few more years, then people won't have to provide meter reads manually. And that is a huge chunk of the people calling the call center. That will help us. Sorry, that's a bit of a sidetrack. Yes, yeah.
So when I put in my meter reading under my bill, that goes directly into the database.
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah, it goes in.
Whereas if you send in a reading, say, email, I think the human being that would be.
At this, as of today, we're looking at trying to use some implements and tools that will help that.
I was just trying to make clarification.
The other good thing,
So do get a lot of complaints, yeah.
the other good thing about typing in a meter reading and having it, technology advanced, is that behind the scenes, we can see whether or not the threshold is exceeded. Like if you type in a wrong number, a lot of people send in wrong numbers, or their hydro meter, something like that, and that kind of stuff. It can tell us if it's outside the threshold that we know something is wrong, and we have the ability to contact the customer.
So we derive a dividend from rate payment. Our policy on utilization of that dividend, has it shifted in terms of using more or putting more into reserves? Where are we at in terms of the dividend?
Yeah, the policy itself, the city policy, has not changed. It's 11% of gross sewer and water sales. So that particular percentage, nor that terminology has changed in many years.
But there's a chance for more money based on higher rates.
The
Potentially, yeah. I
Correct.
mean,
The rates go up.
some people could conserve more water usage and thereby sewer usage, so it doesn't necessarily go up, but good.
Based on a forecast, though, like,
Okay.
it's a calculation. We forecast what the next year's revenue will be from water and sewer rates and just do the math. 11% of what we expect the revenue to be, that is transferred to general tax or to the general revenue fund. So the forecasts are pretty good 1 year out for sure. So if there's some variability there,
And the remainder goes where?
the remainder,
Of the dividend. You said 11% goes.
11% of our revenue.
Oh, 11, yeah, sorry. Yeah, 11%. Okay.
Down from 12.
When it was-
Then Councillor Gillingham was chair of finance. He shaved it from 12 to 11.
Okay.
That is fair.
So now that it's the flat amount, can we calculate what the difference would be?
That was where I was going with it.
We could get that for you. I don't have it here right now.
I think we did in the last rate report. I don't think
Not in this one.
this one will reflect, in March, we had like, here's what, the 2024. The 2024 rates, yeah. So. Yeah, consider that. So you're specifically, what would this rate change be? We didn't cap the dividend.
Definitely. We can get that for you.
I guess it would be 11%.
We'll look at the 2024 rate compared to this one, and there's the difference.
Like 11% of people.
In terms of a motion, I see, I don't know if we're ready to talk motions yet, but the report assumes an equal split between the city, province and feds to the tune of 1.5 billion that the record shows no one's prepared to talk about, other than it's a show already in progress and stay tuned. I don't think I can vote for it without, number one, language that says, assuming this calculation holds, if not, you come back to the table here. I don't think I can do it without some framing, and I've circulated a motion to the department and Brendan around the framing that I provided on transparency and plain language. Otherwise, I'm happy to not support it because the briefings are just emblematic of why KPMG warned we needed a new governance. This is the second month where I'm here, where last month there was a council motion that the department said that they actually had no intention and no knowledge of briefing on related to the federal funding components on the record. This month, we're back again where the federal and provincial formula is being assumed that the department last month just said they had no knowledge of. So this is not sufficient for anyone to make a decision on, I would argue. It just isn't. It is absolutely in line with why we need a new governance regime. It's calling into question to me the utility of the Standing Policy Committee itself. When we're told this is the topic that we're going to be discussing at finance, despite a council directed motion last month for this committee. It's going to be me sitting down with, I think, the clerks next, wondering what the utility of the committee is. And for the department to say that's why the next two reports are looking at affordability, when I was the mover of those last year, it feels like there's a disconnect even between this council committee and the department, because that is I do see though that that report pulls out any of the information around the history of it, as if it's a net new report that the department thought of, versus an absolute motion that was here because of the affordability concerns. So I appreciate the, I might do that too. It was, but the record does show that when we did ask about that program, the department had no idea of the uptake until we probed it different. So now we have two new things, but the two new reports. But we were to receive that motion as information, which is it's feeling contrived to me. It's feeling contrived. So I've circulated the motion for comment, but I am looking at either work with the auditor or work at this committee. And again, I'm not actually sure at this point which it is because of the transparency issues. I've got a colleague saying, let's go into camera. I'm game. We should have learned something from last month's questioning at finance. Because last month we were here and the department was saying, well, we need our counterpart in the CFO's office. I'm like, let's wait 5 minutes to get somebody here from the CFO's department. Because this was a council motion directed for this standing policy committee, not finance, last month, pertaining to federal provincial support. And here we are with $1 billion on the balance. Winnipeggers more interested than not on what the committee is doing because of the 3-hour wait times to pay their bill. The question around that isn't what we're doing to lessen wait times. It's about affordability. And I feel like I'm completely misunderstood any of the concerns that they have that depending on who's saying the word rates, the department takes it in a completely different way. And I am interested in going in camera and doing a deeper dive. And barring that, I've circulated a motion. I can circulate it to you.
26 was reduced by 24% increase, right?
In
Reduced
theory.
by 27 was reduced by 13. What it was projected. We're working at the affordability, so. Reality is it costs money to build things, right?
Sorry, when I'm not looking for tropes
Finance
and
committee is the
nuance.
Finance committee is the treasury. And the treasury is the one that, ultimately is looking for other levels.
I'll let the clerk read the Standing Policy Committee of Water and Waste into the record, Council Chair. That will be a question for Brendan then. What is the Standing Policy Committee governance? In governance, what are we supposed to do here?
Are you referring to you would like me to read the section of the org bylaw pertaining
Yes,
to
sir.
the Standing Policy Committee? Okay. Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment, 13.2, the Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment shall provide policy advice to council on matters within the following areas of jurisdiction: water, wastewater and land drainage services, solid waste services, riverbank management, environment, engineering services related to water, wastewater, land drainage and solid waste services, riverbank management and the environment. And in addition, shall exercise the following powers and duties: to consider and report to council through the Executive Policy Committee on matters respecting utilities and other undertakings in respect to the areas of jurisdiction of the committee, service agreements with the province in respect of the areas of jurisdiction of the committee, work with other municipalities in respect of areas of jurisdiction of the committee, aid for works outside city in respect of the areas of jurisdiction of the committee, award of contracts in accordance with existing council policy in respect of the areas of jurisdiction of the committee, the management of river-related issues which usually cross departmental lines and conventional reporting relationships, and specifically provide the political focus necessary for giving direction and ongoing guidance to the city's river-related endeavors, review and recommend changes to our Winnipeg River policies as required, review and recommend changes to river-related legislation as required, review and recommend adjustments to the city's riverbank acquisition program and related funding, promote river-related capital projects and programs in both the 5-year capital program and operating budgets, develop innovative programs for riverbank stabilization of both public and private lands, consider reports on an issue-by-issue basis for the benefit of the standing policy committees and council so that river-related issues may be considered in an informed and structured manner. The management of environmental issues, which usually cross departmental lines and conventional reporting relationships, and specifically provide the political focus necessary for giving direction and ongoing guidance to the city's environmental endeavors. Review and recommend changes to our Winnipeg environmental policies as required. Review and recommend changes to environmental legislation as required. Develop innovative environmental programs. Consider reports on an issue-by-issue basis for the benefit of the standing policy committees and council so that environmental related issues may be considered and in an informed and structured manner. To deal with matters pertaining to the Clean Environment Commission, to consider and make recommendations on the operating and capital budgets formulated by the Executive Policy Committee and covering those administrative units, having responsibility for the committee's areas of jurisdiction, to consider matters referred to it by council, the Executive Policy Committee, or brought before it by the Chief Administrative Officer, to hear appeals from orders or decisions made by the designated employee in respect to waterways permits, to hear appeals in accordance with the schedule referred to in section 13.1 from conditional use orders made by the Director of Planning, Property and Development, Community Committees, or Board of Adjustment, and variance orders made by the Director of Planning, Property and Development, Community Committees, or the Board of Adjustments.
Service agreement.
Yeah, so that's why Councillor Mays and I think Councillor Chambers are all interested in that area of jurisdiction, which does indicate that there would be some information that could be written down, not at the CFO, but at this committee. Because this is the jurisdiction. That's why I'm finding it difficult, because I'm not seeing it, nor, we've heard absolutely on the record last month that there was no knowledge.
So,
No, I can get that back. If Mr. Shanks, if you think that's unfair, we can read it back on the record. And we can go over it because I was curious about that too. But it was the rationale of why. And it was the council motion and it was for here. And on the record, you had said you were unfamiliar with the program.
Yeah, I was unfamiliar with the details of the CHIP funding, the documents, the final program, the eligibility. It's run out of the corporate finance. Corporate finance is the city's party that does intergovernmental funding agreements. It's not the department. But to say I was unaware of the CHIP funding program, that's disingenuous. So
It's not disingenuous. It was a quote from you that was at the committee. It was why we did not get that briefing at this committee. It was to TBD at finance, and yet it was a council direction for this committee. It is, and it goes to the very point where the clerks read it into the record, because I'm not getting that information at this committee. And then Councillor Mays did an important point. I'm aware of 5 things the federal government is tying cities to. One of which is tying cities to with respect to the infrastructure money. There is no discussion of that in this report.
Infrastructure money.
When we are provided with infrastructure money, there are 5 elements that the federal government is tying this city to. So with respect to transparency and that federal mechanism, what say you? And I think you will say, and correct me if this, is unfair, no, it's not hearsay, it's public information.
what does that mean?
It's public information in every newspaper in advance of budget.
Do we know what the amounts was maybe in terms of budget tomorrow, federal budget?
In terms of what Winnipeg's getting?
Infrastructure spending. I mean, that's one of the big things that.
Oh, but we do know, no, but they have announced what they are considering tying to cities to, and they're pretty it's things that we're familiar with that they've already tied us to in terms of housing, in terms of transit. There is no discussion on that. to
Well,
Councillor
there's
Space's
also
point.
discussion of affordability because that's on top of mind for every level of government these days.
Yes, there is.
Do I have any more questions regarding the rates, which I think are reasonable and as affordable as we can get? So,
I should just, sorry, I just wanted to make sure there's clarity on, there was a comment about, I think the motion about, like what happens if we approve these rates and then the funding doesn't materialize, or it materializes with something unacceptable to council or whatever. We wouldn't need, we don't need a motion to return with a new report. Like, we would have to come back with a new report. Like, if any of these assumptions don't come to pass, then we have to come back with a new rate structure. Or even not, like, not specific even to project 3, but to the rest of the utilities finances. So I just want to make sure that we do have that requirement regardless.
And can I, just one more question, okay, just clarify for me. So we're moving ahead with R, which is gonna require voting for capital budget and change in debt policy. So, we're going first, this resolves your cash flow issue. Right?
Yes.
To move this project along. So it would be at some point, what, a couple, 3, how many years down the road, if that's still the province. The province can just simply tell us the capital agreement that we have, all those dollars go into that project. And you gotta find money to deal with all our other, required infrastructure assets, repairs. So at what point is 999 million in the pier? At what point is that where you have to go?
January.
26.
If we don't have we don't need the actual funding dollars in hand in January. We need an approved plan in January to award the next phase of the project. The cash flows don't pick up for a year or two until we get into way into design and then the construction part of it. So there's a few years before the actual cash flow show up. But if agreements don't materialize, if there isn't a public or formal commitment to a funding plan by January, then we'll have to reset. We'll have to come back with a different approach, all debt or all rates or something to council for their consideration, and that would have an immediate impact on the overall timelines of the project. Like that, if we have to suspend procurement in January, then that is at least a 1-to-1, if not more, impact on the overall timeline. So that puts us into 2033 or 2034.
Remember licensing, you have to be by 2030.
Yeah.
I had a question. Then obviously the rates might get better, they might get worse. If it was 894 federal provincial, the rates would need to be higher. If it was $1,094,000,000, then the rates would be correspondingly less. So I can't say that this is the best we can do, because I don't know. You're using 994 equal split between Canada and the Manitoba, and it's not exactly there because we appear to be in for 468. So it's not a very crude a third, it appears. So why are we using the very precise number 994?
Maybe I can backtrack and just talk about, I think we've had a little bit of this kind of conversation about rates and rate setting, right? So 994 is the number that we are using as the best example that we have. But when it comes to rate modeling, we do take into consideration only cash flows. So the cash flow in the beginning of such a large project are far less spending than they are as we progress into the project. And what we want to do, why we do these kinds of things, is to ensure that our rates are most affordable at the time of spending. So it's not like we're putting in $1 billion worth of budget in year one. We're putting in a small amount of cash flow because that's what we know what we're going to be doing, so that our rates are tempered only to what we actually have to pay that year. And that, of course, is built over a 10-year rate model to make sure that there is sufficient funding for the longer period of time, plus that there isn't any rate shock. We're not going up by 20% in year 3 and then down by 15% in year 4. We are trying very hard to make it affordable and even through that. I don't know if that helps in your question.
No, I mean, I get all that. It's not that that's,
Well,
but it's, we're putting in an assumption here. If we assumed 100 million more from the feds, then we're even more affordable in our increase. Yeah, I would like that. I would like that too. Let's put 100, like, where's the 994 coming from?
I'm just to clarify too, the timing of the cash flows for the project, you know, whether or not the other levels of government, cash flow it, split over 10 years or 5 years or all lump sum, that sort of thing changes. Will have less impact on 2026. Like the 2026 rate, it would be a very small impact on the 2026 rate because we're talking about project 3 being the biggest impact, project 3 being where these assumptions are, and project 3 cash flows really picking up year 2, 3, 4 that way. So it's the approval and the authorization of the money is what we need right now. The actual money comes later.
Why isn't 994 not 996?
It's a straight third of what's left on.
Based on some recommendations that we had in discussion with some other companies.
So that last row on table 1 has it split 497 for each share. And we already have 29 million in, so it's 468. That's where so it's the 1491 cost estimate. Yeah, divided by 3. That's where that.
1.491.
Yeah.
Divided by 3. Right?
Yeah, yes, and if that changes a little bit, like the other projects, like the intent, the target, the public phrasing of it by other levels of government is always, you know, this 1/3 share. That's the kind of target. How it works out is not always necessarily 1/3 share. You know, for example, if we do get the 497 from every level of government, in the end, our overall NUPIC upgrade, all 3 projects, we're still paying 37%. So we're paying a little bit more. So it's just how it works out in terms of eligible costs and timing of these projects. And like I said, when the other project 1 dollars were fixed and this sort of thing. So and I did get an update on what eligible costs, an example of ineligible costs to be land acquisition and legal costs, that sort of thing. But the bulk of costs are. Sorry. So the 497 is 1/3 of 1491.
Yeah, that's fine.
Trying
Rock
to
on. Let's go.
canvas why they do.
I assume the debate about the project labor agreement is not best held today, but would be best held whenever we get to procurement, which you're saying is RFP is coming pretty damn soon, it sounds like, for project 3. Okay, thank you.
I'm prepared to move like a summary saying that council take into account the foundations for the formula. And based on the formula in the report, approve a 2-year increase, with some, if not all, the 3 points I make. The sub bullets on the points that are made in the motion are largely discussion points to assist the department in understanding, why I'm concerned about transparency, affordability, and the line of sight for Winnipeggers and plain language around this. The $1 billion matter, so I think it does need a bit of a framing. So I can't fully accept the recommendations of the public service without detailing the foundation for which the recommendation is made, i.e. that federal provincial funding will be at the rate they claim in the report. The recommendation relies on that. I don't like that the recommendation doesn't provide the cumulative impact of last year and this year, but it is the way they need it, which they've explained in previous years. So I'm prepared to move as amended. If all of that makes sense to the committee. No, that's not at all what I just said. I said that I am prepared to move the rates if there is a framing of the foundation for which the rates are the logic that the rates fall out of. You can disagree, and I thought I was in order, but I also thought I was clear.
All 19 plus 45, that's still not the rates go up in sewer.
Not a lot of people calling in.
If I may, just to make sure I'm crystal clear on the intent here, Councillor Rowlands, it would be to approve the rates as presented, but also include the first motion you had circulated for a framing.
Yes, and yes.
What reports about the environmental of using the biological removal and nutrients? But there's other reports that provide this information that you're talking about. If we keep adding more to the discussion about the rate report, don't you think that that'll further confuse the customer?
No, that's why I'm forwarding the motion, Councillor
The
Eby.
transparency.
I'll withdraw my motion, wait for another one. I'll withdraw the motion, wait for another one.
Not really, so.
No, well, I mean, I'm sure that'll. You have a lot of customers phoning in right now, Councillor Eby, from your ward, and you don't understand. Doesn't sound like anyone else is prepared to move, but I'll stand down.
He's withdrawn the motion.
No, I withdrew it, Councillor Eby.
Except for the one I.
No, I withdrew
Everything
it.
else is all being communicated with this committee all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you're satisfied.
So like I don't.
Well, I withdrew this motion, so it's. I withdrew the motion. No, I withdrew it.
Well,
Okay, I'll move the motion. I'll move the motion, or, hold on, recommendation, hold on 1 second.
Right.
Yeah, council will approve the 2-year, so the public service recommendation, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
2-year wait, 26 and 27.
Correct.
I'd like to speak to that.
What do you mean?
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
At this stage, I'm not prepared to support it, and I am assuming the mayor's staff are listening in somehow. They, hopefully that is now the habit. I do think if we could get some better information on the 994, and it's crudely calculated, all we have is there are serious negotiations. I frankly don't think I am doing my job correctly to approve a rate based on that, and in 2 years, we find out there wasn't any money coming, and then there's a huge increase, bigger than it would have been had we tempered it with something today. Or maybe we're, as we said, maybe we're overshooting. Maybe there's 1.1 billion coming, not 994. So if we can get some closed door briefing, if necessary, on the progress on this, then I would certainly be in favor. But I don't want to sound all negative here. It is a great achievement that we're going forward on biosolids. Province at some point will announce, after we've announced it 3 times already, the 137 million, and the feds have announced their share. Great. Kudos to the mayor on that. Sincerely. Good. We're doing the biosolids. And we're actually moving forward. We're saying we're in for 500 something on, 400, high 400s on debt. And that'll even require us to move the debt ceiling. Like, this is a big step forward. That is further than we've ever got on nutrient removal. My problem here is I don't think at this stage, and again, I would very much like more information. I don't think I can support something where we're just told, we're assuming there's $1 billion coming. I just don't think that's, I mean, what are you gonna say? Don't you trust us? Well, I think Phil Sheagle said that to me back in about 2011, and maybe I should have gone with my gut on that one. So I'm not insinuating anything here. I'm just saying, no, my job is not to blindly trust people. My job is to ask questions. So there's $1 billion here. That would be great. That would really be fantastic if it's coming. Give me some information and I'll be inclined to vote for this. And yes, it'll increase rates for people, but that's always been the dilemma with, if you've got massive environmental projects, they're gonna cost. So for today, not supportive. Hopefully in the 2 to 3 weeks we have before council, we can get a council seminar. God knows we get them on everything from parking strategies to water meters. We could probably have one on the largest capital project in the history of the city of Winnipeg. We could probably do that.
Yeah.
That would be great. Kudos to the mayor for getting it this far, sincerely, but give me some more information and then I can vote for it.
So I have a discussion point when you're ready, Councilor. So in the implementation of audit recommendations for the audit we had on the North End Sewage Treatment Plant Upgrade Project of December 2024, there was 44 total recommendations and it's only 23% complete. So when I said my next steps was to go to the auditor again, I very much am concerned about this as a project. As my colleague, Councillor Mays stated, we have not had a councillor seminar since the KPMG audit concerns of council. And now we, and I know that through the furrowed brow of the public service, they are concerned about this too, perhaps. I certainly am. I remain very concerned about it. I would also, I would have supported continuing on if there had been some framing around the very math that is in the report. But given that I withdrew my motion, this doesn't have my support. And my next steps are to go once again to the auditor. I have a meeting booked with them, and this will be a top of my list. Why? Because there's 34 recommendations are in progress. There are only 23% that have been done since that audit. The provision of information to this committee has me so concerned that I asked the clerks to read what was in the org bylaw for the committee. I just feel that there's no transparency in information, no concern about the value for money for Winnipeggers. And this was a hotly anticipated report, and I found it really thin, unfortunately, including the very foundation that the math is based on.
This particular project is ongoing. Very clear. I'll be very clear, there's ongoing. We think. Process. So it's a big problem, it's that whole council governance over huge projects, which hopefully that governance model actually would describe what is the risk related to $994 million.
We should, just one about the audit too, I should just point out that every single recommendation has a timeline associated with it. Not all of them are due right away. We worked with KPMG to establish timelines for completion. I believe we're doing pretty good. I'm not sure if all of them are on there, but the 44, and we do report go with the auditor to EPC when they report on audit progress. So all 44 recommendations were not to be done already. They have a timeline associated with them. Just thought.
Can I ask a math question?
Thanks.
Just occurs, I mean, if we're going in for a third and the increase is only 4.9 in 2027. How was it that we were projecting 25% if it was all us? Well, we're projecting 20-something percent.
That's for 27.
Like from the March
Yeah,
report versus this report here today.
I mean, really,
17 point something percent, and now we're at 4.9.
right, but it's the third thing that I'm gonna come back to, right? I mean, if we're in for a third and that's 4.9, then if we're in for all of it, shouldn't that be 14.7?
It's not 1/3 of the project in 2026. It's the cash flow issue, and also the rate model calculated that was presented for rates in March of 2025 was based on the latest and greatest cash flow estimate done in whatever it was, November 2024, at the end of 2024. So since then, with the we've adjusted so because this is gonna get a little in the weeds, but project 2 and project 3, progressive design build. The original cash flow we had a different dollar value assigned for the first few years of project 2. So we're that much further along in project 2 now. You're happy to the development phase. So we have a better idea of what kind of cash flow to expect for project 3 in the same phase. So we actually changed our cash flows for 2026. So that's part of the factor there, but also the confidence such as the street the rate changes simply a third of it was before. And our third coming from debt means our percentage here is, financing specific to that project. You know what I mean? Like we're not, our 1/3 is.
I think you're saying to me you're comparing apples and oranges, which is fine. That's a valid point to make, but then you should make that. If you say that we're down from 20 or 17 to 4, what? Yeah, but
Our approach has that impact. This change in approach has that impact.
sure.
So
That's
what
right.
would account for those differences? What would you say we're further along in project 2? So what would account for those differences in terms of the adjustment?
Like the original project 2 forecast from 2 years ago would have had a dollar value X spent in 2025.
Okay.
Whereas now that we selected our proponent, our partner, and it's don't want to take away from, but it's kind of like a time and materials thing with the progressive design build. So you're working on the design.
On real time?
Yeah, it's more real time. So that's saying, well, hey, we're not, you know, we've got we're seeing a revised cash flow for project 2 in the designing phase, if you want to call it that, the development. So we expect to see the same sort of trend for project 3. So we adjust our project 3 cash flows. And the absurdity of these billion-dollar projects are that, you know, you're moving tens of millions of dollars around, you know, your year. And so it has a corresponding impact. And again, like I said, the rates only approach has all the cash flow, you know, factors. But when we're saying, hey, we're going to come up with, you know, $497 million, sorry, $468 million in debt, like that, we're looking at now a financing cost instead of a straight cash flow, right? So there's two things that are changing those.
We just want to mention as well, it's not just the nutrient removal or biosolids or those big capital projects that we actually look at all the cash flows. We look at them all, every year, twice a year.
What table is it that this of the demand on?
Appendix B has the Appendix B is the financial projection from 2026 to 2035. So it shows like the revenue and expenditures. It doesn't break it down by project.
But that is that exemplified actual need?
Yeah, I think
Correct.
It shows that there's also Appendix A shows just a chart of or graph of projected capital spending. So that's obviously the big hitters in there are project 2 and project 3. So it's combined in there. That's not just project 3. But yeah, it's a huge, you know, it's, well, what are we at
I
here?
just want to find out that by 2035 until 30.
Yeah.
30 environment. All right. Sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys read that table, but I did.
we have a motion on the table.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna call the question then. If all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor. All those opposed?
Support it.
Yes.
So with a tie vote, it would go up to Executive Policy Committee without recommendation.
So. Okay.
A quick break.
That's good. We take a quick break, Mr. Chair.
Can we take a quick break?
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be great. Call the meeting of the Study Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment back to order. We are now on report number 2, the Help to Others program. Improvements, I would call it.
Yeah, this is the written version of the verbal report that was given last SBC, summarizing the requested changes we need council approval or changes to the H2O Help to Others policy. So yeah, this admin report is the kind of formal document to change the make the changes in the policy that we're talking about. We talked about this one. The changes are primarily being made to increase eligibility, make it easier for people to be eligible. We're trying to streamline the application process, trying to match what Salvation Army is already doing with hydro, to get some synergies there. We're also doing a bunch of outreach, and we identify the different programs, different entities that we're reaching out to make them aware of the program so that they can promote it and offer it to that folks in need. I believe I ran through a verbal list last time, and some other organizations were mentioned. They are now actually incorporated in the written report. We made those changes. I think that was the last couple ones.
Yeah, North End Community Review Corporation, Manitoba Start, North Point Douglas Women's Center.
So, yeah.
And over time, if somebody,
If we know of organizations, we'll add
otherwise you
them.
can just add them, right?
Yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah,
it's not like these are the only ones.
no, sorry, the report, that the list is offered as, includes but not limited to, like we can add it. Yeah, it's not the policy doesn't identify which, entities.
As an example, counselor, one of the things that you don't see on the list is making sure that that information gets out to our libraries, gets out to the community safety area at the Millennium Library so that that information is there.
So you also have like, or community organizations here, I'm Away, Seed, Women's Central, West Central Women's Resource Center and Main Street Project and others.
It's to educate, and we're gonna educate to I don't think that the landlord tenancy branch advertises their rent assist program.
RTB.
So, but we're also, when we're educating and communicating, we're communicating what's available, right?
So there's a simplified application process
Yes.
that you're aligning with Manitoba Hydro.
Yeah.
Any other education provided? In terms of how to complete the applications, do you have?
It'll be on our website. Our utility billing center staff will be fully aware. We're just taking away having the application form online and people feeling like they have to fill it out before they go. Salvation Army does the same thing for neighbors helping neighbors. So in one case, they may be filling both out at the same time for the resident. And then they'll walk them through. And they have a private conversation and they'll talk about the situation. We don't get that information. Our current application asks you to explain your situation. We're not putting people through that.
There are certain times that of the year that individuals will fall into arrears of their billing. Is there a period of time that we as a city will not cut off that service if they are in arrears? Much like Hydro?
We're not in the same position as Hydro. We do usually go after the larger bills first. We also know who the repeat offenders are, I'm going to say. And we did get in a position during COVID where we did not turn people off because it was a public health issue, right? You need people to be able to wash their hands.
Events?
During,
We used to, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I thought at one point during heat events, we didn't.
During
But-
Yeah.
During Canada Post strike,
Mhm.
last fall, we did suspend disconnections because there was no way for the customers to know whether they were getting a notice. Right? So we will suspend disconnection depending on what's going on.
Questions?
No.
Councilor Rhodes?
Yeah, prepared to move, but I am interested in hearing back from the department. Number one, the program has limited financials. I think you're asking for a little over 50,000 in budget here. And what we heard from the program is that we had maybe 5 people do uptake, so I'm looking to see if we're doing better than that. So I'm hoping that the committee would entertain a report back in 180 days with a briefing on, is it going well? Is there program uptake? And incorporating a report back even verbally on, is there program uptake? Are we at the end of the budget? Right? Like, do you need more availability of budget? But what does that look like in 180 days? Is there program uptake?
So in terms of the budget, we're not asking for more money. That's currently built into our budget. If there's uptake
And we're not gonna stop and go, oh no, we're done, right? We're going to continue to give out the credits, providing that customers meet the eligibility requirements. And if there's like next year, when we prepare the rates, like, or we look at the budget and stuff, it's the money, the credits are coming from the utility. Fair?
Yeah.
So if there's an increase, there may need to be revisions made at some point to the rates.
Right, but, well,
No?
Uh,
That's too simplified?
sorry, to Councilor's point though, that you're like, some follow-up report on
To let you know
statistics on
successfully.
how much is being used and how many people are, like, what our outreach is, that's a job. We could do that, right? It's be, next summer, come back with an update on how our improvements have increased. Or who are you using, if you're looking for stats on, it, right, that's, like, we could do that.
Like if we're genuinely committee interested in affordability and if literally this is the program, then the committee, it goes to follow, would be interested in an update on whether or not the one program we have is actually working. And so if one is genuinely interested and not wanting to be disingenuous, for instance, we would want to hear a report back. Is it working? Because we know that we've had this program for years and 5 people, despite the affordability issues that Winnipeggers have, 5 people availed themselves of this program. So it was not a successful program by any means, maybe
So-
for those 5 people.
Can I correct that information though, Counselor? Because in 2023, we had 37 recipients. 2024, we had 36 recipients. And by the end of this year, by the end of August this year, we already had 20 recipients. So it's more than 5. I agree with you. Like, we should come back to you with a report to say, yeah, it's made a difference. Can we look at doing something, say, mid-year, coming back to you in June or July?
That is
With
what
those?
180 days is. That would be
Oh,
about
okay.
June or July.
Okay. Yeah,
That would be about June or July.
because we'll be ready to launch by the end of November. If council approves the changes, we're going to get the program materials out. The new process will be in place, so we will have 5-6 months, we should have at least 6 months of statistics for you. Okay,
I have a question, just, so we talk about, well, what effect is this having on the people with the least amount of money in terms of rate increases? Is it possible to collect general water usage data not associated with an individual's name, but just general water consumption?
You mean like like usage stats on?
Yeah, so you can say, like, you know, you're gonna know what their income is, right? Although you're not gonna associate the name, but you can say, people living in this is what's happened, right? So this is how much water they use, because if I use less water, it costs me less, right?
well, the information is available. We'd have to put in some format that makes sense for you.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to get a breakdown of what, like, this year's $1.19 increase, like, yeah, that was, so far only 20, but we'll see, right? But anyway, if you could do that, so it makes sense, like, just to get an idea. So this is for up to 5, a family of 5,
No, there's,
family of 4.
well, a family of 4, the credit amount is $510. If it's
Well,
5 or more, it's 580.
Yeah.
We're going to, if our rates do increase in 2026, we will be looking to increase the maximum credits.
All right, that's
policy,
gonna be
yes.
part of the policy now?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Anyway, it'd be good to get an idea of just sort of generally how consumption is going. That sort of thing, so.
You mentioned that you have knowledge of chronic individuals that fall into arrears of their. That means could you, again, to what Councillor, the chair is stating, track those individuals along consumption usage?
In terms of when they apply to the program, you mean?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it's only been a one-time program until now, so this is going to be new for us if we've got repeat. Is that what you're looking
Yeah.
for? Okay.
All right, so do we need to put that in the motion or no?
We could,
Could, yeah.
I did circulate a motion to almost what you were saying, Counselor Edie.
Yeah.
And Counselor Chambers. With respect to a report back in 180 days.
So with that, then just at that little piece where if they're reapplying, if they're, and again, there's a time span, 24 months, is it? If they're coming on, reapplying again, assess their consumption usage just to determine whether or not there's an actual need or whether they're actually abusing.
So I don't have that in the motion. I think that would be a separate motion. It was just report back in 180 days with a briefing on affordability impacts, including data on utility rate changes. Is that something that you're saying, Councillor Chambers? Customer arrears, I wrote. H2O program uptake, which probably should be first, and related affordability indicators as part of regular reporting on water and waste services, including maybe.
Well, so from my perspective, I want to make sure that if a person is chronically in arrears, is there an opportunity to educate them with respect to budget?
Information on information on education for compliance.
Correct.
Okay, so can we add that, including information efforts on the department for compliance?
Does that make sense?
Does that make sense?
So,
I call it education.
yeah, I'm not
compliance.
sure how we'll be able to report that. And the reason I say that is because Salvation Army works really hard with applicants to
Yeah.
try and identify other ways to, like, they really explore, like, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you look into the Manitoba Rent Relief Fund, for instance? So depending on what it is, so that they do a lot of work, and if they may catch people before we get application, if they come back with a recommendation, they say, no, this applicant doesn't meet the requirements, it stops there.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what,
But
and we can
is
see what we
there-
can do, right?
So what is, like, when the Salvation Army comes back with a recommendation saying this doesn't meet, what kind of grounds are they basing that assessment?
On whether they meet the eligibility requirements. So if they've applied within the 24 hours, they wouldn't meet. Most of the time, it's around the low income cutoff. Right? So and it's getting trickier because there are a lot of different situations out there. It's not just last year's financial situation, it could be the situation you're in now.
And so tracking this will give us more information in terms of how to proceed with this program.
Okay.
So, and that's essentially what I'm trying to get is glean more information on what are the circumstances and situations individuals find themselves in that are applying to this program. So the more information we can gather, the better we can kind of know where to tweak the program.
So keeping track of, because I don't think we have this, keeping track of those applications that are rejected as well.
Yeah.
Because the Salvation Army will speak to a customer and they kind of, you don't meet the requirements. We've never had an appeal from someone saying, I was told, I didn't meet, I want to appeal and for these reasons.
Is it appealable?
Yes, it is. Just like the water leak program. Yes.
Right, does that, Counselor, is that, okay?
Okay, so go ahead and move it, Councillor Chambers.
So moved?
So moved on.
Or do you want to read it correctly?
I would just like to be clear on what we're moving, Councillor Rowlands, the phrasing of the motion that you had circulated,
Should move in the
it'll be
recommendation.
the recommendation, but the further resolve. That in the interest of maintaining the city's focus on affordability, the public service be directed to report back to the committee in 180 days with a briefing on affordability impacts, data on H2O program update, utility rate changes, customer arrears, and related affordability indicators as part of a regular reporting on water and waste services. Also including information on departmental efforts to provide education for compliance.
Yes, and I guess just as a further, as I mentioned that, the department used this information to update itself with information on potential,
Future changes to.
yes.
To guide future changes,
To guide future changes of the program.
something to further resolve.
Yeah.
Okay. So as written here, circulated with those additions.
Right, we can call the question then.
I,
I,
All in favor? Yes.
I,
Nobody's opposed, that is carried. Colleagues, moving on to report 3, which is the affordability, excuse me. Yes, Council Holmes.
prepared to receive this information, but in terms of a governance statement, I do find it curious that we had a verbal report that fell out of this motion. And then this motion was to receive it as information, and yet we just had a report doing the thing. So I'm curious as to why that happened. Was it a weird thing of the IRS system? Was it in, you know, what happened there?
I can offer at least my take on it in terms of this is so the housing affordability utility rate increases report, like this report, came into us by motion, and we brought it back when we had, I think we had a couple extensions on this. Is probably in history here. A couple extensions on this. Part of our work on our end was trying to coordinate what the final changes would be with Hydro and
We knew Manitoba Hydro was making changes to their helping neighbors program. But they were highlighting a few things back in the spring around EIA applicants, around people being able to apply more than once. They did not finalize those changes till mid-September, which was after the September meeting where we had this housing authority affordability and utility rate increases report at SPC.
So this report, what it said, it basically says, we're gonna make a bunch of changes to the H2O policy, make it more accessible and increase its visibility and this sort of thing, which requires a council policy. And so this report is for information, but yes, it got laid over so that it's together with the action item. That's a separate report to change the policy, right? So now we have that in the same agenda.
Would it have made more sense if this one had gone before the H2O report in the agenda?
I think it would make more sense if the H2O report was the. So verbally last month, you said this report is coming. Yes. So you connected the dots that it was the council motion that produced this report. And then there's a net new agenda item. Anyways, happy to receive this information.
received as information. She's moved.
Yeah.
Receipt of.
You moved it? Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that is carried. Moving on to report number 4.
I can speak to this one as this was a miscommunication. Just due to the naming of report number 1 and just some of the way the information was laid out, it was missed by me that this was indeed the response to the report back on that number 4 of a council decision. Therefore, this was added as its own agenda item. Unfortunately, by the time this has happened, it had already been sort of approved to go forward. So the agenda is published as is.
So this is just a
For information.
for information receipt of.
So moved. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody. Nope. Those opposed?
If we receive it as information, it's still on the agenda forever, right?
No,
Okay, it gets removed from the agenda.
Correct.
The recycling options for community events.
No.
Sorry, this is
number 4.
2025 to 2027 revised sewer volume rate.
Just,
You're in agreement?
yeah, okay, so you vote for information, all right. Nobody's opposed, that's carried.
Now is recycle.
Number 5 is the recycle,
Recycling options for community events.
and I can't remember our discussion, so we're gonna move ahead and look at this, but it involves other departments.
Yes, yes, this was a motion that came to this committee from community. Council, to look at, what can be done at, City of Winnipeg property hosted events to, require recycling or coordinate recycling and promote it. So when it came to this SPC in, July or September? July,
September.
Yeah.
September, yeah.
I think it was recognized that, yeah, it involves more than just waste. So it got the motion, the way I read this, the motion got laid over for further consideration. Like there isn't like public service doesn't have a board to present or anything right now, but I think if the motion is supported, I guess it goes forward to big public service, I guess.
And then we'll look at how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be if the city was hosting an event, are we setting recycling bins if there's food or drink involved, or making sure that we're thinking environmentally at these events as well?
I think so.
Yeah, it was, apparently there's events happening where like they found that there's an added cost, so they don't want to spend the money and do the recycling, so everything goes into a garbage, right? Rather than separate. And then we heard in September, we heard from Recycle Everywhere, where they actually, I think, provide resources for community events to help support. So hopefully when that comes back in the report, when the report comes back, how they can help community events, right?
Well, and so I brought greetings at an event in October at the Fort White Center, and it was Recycle Everywhere that was there and talked about, we talked about trying to reach our diversion rates,
Oh, right.
the
Virginia.
going forward. And we had a very robust schedule in terms of increasing our diversion rates that seem to have slowed down. But as we move towards things like self-separated organics programs, that's going to increase diversion. And then just, and you see the ads on TV all the time with respect to, if you drink it, you bin it type thing. So again, there are campaigns underway, but where the city can partner with CBRA, that would be good in terms of the city taking a lead or, the initiative to think about diversion and recycling.
So a lot of those partnerships can be with Public Works, who has parks and open spaces.
Yeah. Well, and then, if it's an entrenched in emotion, which it is, that will direct the public service to reach out to those organizations to partner and collaborate with.
Great.
I'll move the motion.
All those in favor?
Just for clarity, we are just moving the original motion, the Winnipeg Public Service report back. And did we want this committee still? Because I know there was the talk about moving to.
We want the
services
report to come back.
To come back here, okay?
Yeah.
This, my perspective, solid waste
Waste
is
is-
responsible for all solid waste.
And we, the department has indicated, preferred timeline to 60 days.
Yeah.
Need more than 60 days?
120?
Yeah, maybe 2 months. Good meeting at least. Well, if I can add.
Need 90?
20 at least, 120 or.
All the big community event, we're hoping to get this straightened out
for the spring, right? So, like, the organization that asked for this motion, you know, they were hoping that we would get something in place immediately, but, so hopefully when the big event thing, outdoor events and stuff happens, get it.
So it would be February meeting. Well, we'll try them.
Didn't sound so sure about 60.
Well, 60 is tight, just because the report will basically have to be written, we'd have to already have it written and go to reviews to get to.
Yeah. So you're moving it with 90 days? All those in favor? Nobody's opposed, that's carried.
I move adjournment.
Yes, thank you, sir. We, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.